Here we go. All right. So this is week one of our unmistakable series, and we're looking at Genesis 3 and, or excuse me, Exodus 3 and 4. You got me thinking about Genesis. Exodus 3 and 4. Although Genesis 3 and 4 are pretty good too. But anyway.
Oh yeah.
There's some interesting things that happen in Genesis 3 and 4 that we're still dealing with today. Anyway, that's another topic.
Yes, it is.
All right. So Exodus 3 and 4 are the focus texts for this week. The sermon text is Exodus 3, 7 to 15, which is the initial conversation that Moses and God have at the burning bush. So in my message, I do a little bit of setup from the beginning of Exodus to get to this point, and then unpack the whole idea of God's promise of I will be with you. So again, just to go back to the beginning of Exodus 3, Moses has been for about 40 years, he has been in the desert after killing the Egyptian in chapter 2. And he is the shepherd for his father-in-law Jethro, who's also known as Reuel, and that's at the end of let's see, in chapter 2. So he helps. Oh, goodness gracious, his daughter. Let's see. Golly, where is it? I know it's listed here. Anyway, he helps. He goes to Midian. The priest's daughter comes to draw water, and he helps. And then he comes back, and he's like, go get him and bring him. So Zipporah is Moses' wife. Anyway, then chapter 3 opens and his name is changed. Golly, it's right there. Hold on.
I believe you.
I know it's here. I just have to find it. The priest of Midian. Jethro's in 3:1. Anyway, it's there. I promise you it is. And I can't find it at the moment. Anyway, so Moses becomes a shepherd for his father-in-law Jethro, and it's in the act of in the process of being the shepherd there, he goes he leads the flock beyond the wilderness, and he comes to the Mount Horeb, and there's the burning bush, and he hears God calling to him. He goes over. God says, stay right there, holy ground, take off your sandals. Moses puts his face to the ground because he's afraid. And then God reveals himself and says, I'm calling you to go back into Egypt, to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go so they can go out and worship me. And so in that, there is the revealing of the divine name in verse 14, and the promise of I will be with you is in verse 12. And this will be a sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. And then begins the excuses that Moses goes through. And we'll get to that in a minute.
I've got a Ben Franklin quote for you.
Oh, okay.
When we get down that far.
Oh, okay, good. All right, excellent. So God reveals his name, and he says, I'm going to, I want you to go and assemble the elders of Israel, tell them who I am and what I'm going to do, tell them about the land, all this kind of stuff. And then in verse 19, he says, and God says, I know, however, that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will perform in it. After that, he will let you go. And then he says, you will be in such favor with the Egyptians that when you go, you won't go empty-handed. They'll just give you stuff. Um, and then Moses says, he makes an excuse again, and he says, suppose they don't believe me or listen to me. And he says, okay, well, here, put your hand in your coat. Comes out leprous, puts it back in, comes out fine. And he puts his, he throws his staff on the ground, turns into a snake, picks it up, turns it back into a staff. He's like, okay, go show them that, they'll be good. And then he says, no, I've never been eloquent of speech. And so he says, okay, Aaron will go with you and he'll be the one to talk. I'll tell you what to tell him, and then he'll talk. And so, it's like telephone, right? Anyway, and then Moses finally goes back to Egypt, and he asks for permission to go from Jethro. He says, go in peace. And he puts all of his family, loads them all up, and he goes. And then there's this interesting little scene where, like in verse 24, in chapter 4, verse 24, 25 and 26, where God wants to kill Moses. And this is just this interesting little side note. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So then it says, on the way at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. But Zipporah, that's his wife, took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, truly, you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. It was then she said, a bridegroom of blood by circumcision. Verse 25 has a cross reference to Joshua 5, 2 and 3. So I'm just gonna look that up real quick. I don't know if that has the same kind of thing. Oh, that's about flint knives. And he circumcised the Israelites. That's the new generation getting circumcised. So anyway, I don't really know what's going on there. I don't know why God wants to kill Moses other than the excuses that he's made, but he's given him all the answers to the excuses. So it's still, anyway, there's something going on there, but I'm not quite sure what it is.
What verse is that?
That's chapter 4, verses 24 through 26.
Because I have a quote, I have an explanation, but I don't know if it's valid. I'm sorry, chapter 4, what verse?
24, 25, and 26.
Let's see. This is a mysterious event, but it seems that God is confronting Moses in the strongest possible way because Moses had not circumcised his son. God demands that this be set right before Moses enter Egypt and begin to fulfill the call of God. Perhaps Zipporah objected to the rite of circumcision previously. She was not an Israelite and may have thought it a barbaric custom. Here again, they're using the word perhaps. Perhaps this was why God held Moses accountable for not doing what was right, even though his wife didn't like it, but disabled Moses so that Zipporah had to perform the circumcision itself. So that it seems to be about the circumcision, the fact that he had not done his son. And if he hadn't done his son, then that meant he was unclean, and God wouldn't want him in his presence.
Nice. No, that makes sense. But it's just this interesting little scene that it's like you get all the work up to it. He's like burning bush and everything, and I'm gonna send you and I'm gonna equip you with everything you need, and I'm gonna knock down every excuse you have, and then I'm gonna kill you. Like, wait a minute.
By the way.
By the way, you forgot one thing. There's one thing you lack. I've heard that somewhere else. Anyway, so these two chapters here, chapter 3 and chapter 4, set out what Moses is supposed to be doing as he's leading the people, and he knocks down all of the excuses, which we'll get to in a minute, And he says, I'm going to give you everything you need. I'm going to send you there. Yes, Pharaoh's not going to listen to you until compelled by a mighty hand, and I'm going to take care of that too. And I'm going to give you everything you need, and you're going to come out of this. And the promise is that you're going to lead these people out, and you're going to worship God right here in this very place. And Moses holds on to that as he goes into Egypt, and as he goes to Pharaoh, and as he continually sees, like, as we get to the plagues, you see there's a little bit of hope, and then Pharaoh closes the door again. A little bit of hope, closes the door again, and it sustains him through that process that happens in those chapters. So this is the beginning of the most one of the most epic and most referred to stories throughout the rest of Scripture. The Exodus is the framework for Israelite history. Throughout the rest of the Old Testament and into the New Testament, it's referred to over and over again, and so this is one of the key stories for biblical history, and it starts with a little guy. It starts with a guy named Moses, and as I say in my sermon, it starts with a little baby who was pushed in a boat out into the Nile River in order to be. In order to evade the Pharaoh's order of killing all the Hebrew babies. So, and there's some strong women that are present in that story, in that first couple of chapters of Exodus as well. So the questions as we get to them are: Moses sees a vision that compels him to draw closer. If only to see why the bush is not burned up, and ask the question about if you've seen such a clear vision of the Lord like Moses, and if so, what it was, and if not a burning bush, what clear evidence have you seen for God working in your life? And this is one of those reflection questions where just kind of because I know I've had somebody tell me that they've had a like burning bush kind of moment. Where they saw, he called it the Shekinah glory, and I'm like, wow, that was a new word for me.
Wow.
In that way. But but he knew that he was looking into the presence of God in that particular moment, and he was convinced of it. And I was like, well, okay, very cool. And it wasn't like it was a powerful story to hear him, it was similar to, it was a bright light kind of thing, kind of moment. But he told me it was a transformational kind of moment in his life. And so that was cool. But not everybody has that. But I think we all have these reminders of this evidence that we can put together over the course of our life to see God's presence in our life. And I'll talk about one in particular that is meaningful to me in my message. Anyway, so that's one of those kind of getting to discuss questions. Question 2 is about why does God warn Moses not to get too close to the burning bush? That's in 3:5. What does Moses do in response to God's warning? That's in verse 6. And then what, if anything, happens when we venture too near holy things today? So what God says is, he says to stop. He calls his name. He calls it twice. So that's a repetition. And in Hebrew, that's an elevation of the voice level. And so Moses stops and he says, "Here I am." And God says to take off your sandals because where you're standing is holy ground. And the way that he responds is that he falls on his face because he's afraid to look at the Lord. And this is where this first there's a a continuance of the idea that you can't look at God and live, kind of that comes up in Scripture. That if you try to look at the face of God, then then you're going to die. There's several other places where Moses is like, there's as you get further into the narrative during the wilderness, there will be like God or Moses wants to see God's face. I think it's in Exodus 34, I think, where God hides him in the cleft of the rock and passes by him, and he sees the back of the Lord, because he couldn't look at the front and behold that glory. So I think that's right. Well, don't quote me on that for sure. It's somewhere around there. So the question about what is it that what if anything happens when we venture too near holy things today? When I wrote that question, the image that came to mind is from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and the face melt scene at the end.
Yeah.
When the guy drinks from the cup, the wrong cup. You have chosen unwisely, and it's all.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I hadn't thought about that one.
Yeah, sorry.
No, the only thing I came up with, and it is a personal answer, and that is, I have gone into, well, there's a church in Germany, Wieskirche, I believe it is, white church. Gail and I were in Germany we were actually in Italy on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And we had friends in Munich that we were to stay with whenever we were back in Germany. And he took us out to Wieskirche outside of Munich. And I, along with the fact that it was the 9/11 Sunday, so to speak, it was just one of the most, I felt a tremendous sense of reverence when I walked in there. And I guess that's my item, especially when I get close to or going St. Patrick's in New York, or we went to in fact, we attended a service in Vienna before we ended up going to Germany, and it just feels so neat to be there in something that just seems to be holy.
Yeah, I went to Ireland and Scotland a few years ago. And I know it's amazing. Go if you can. And there was we went to the island of Iona, which is on the northwest shore of Scotland, and the abbey there on Iona is hundreds of years old. Stone floor, stone walls. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And you walk in there and you're like, wow.
You feel the presence of God. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, those are, it's one of those, I think that when you step into one of those moments, the phrase I would use is it takes your breath away. You stop short. So I think that's what happens. I think that's what happens today. So, all right. Number 3, Lord has big plans for Moses. Moses has trouble believing the Lord. He offers a series of excuses to push away the calling. And so then I gave you a chart for references and for the excuses. And so the ones that I found, and these are the 6 that I found, are in 3:11, which is who am I? 3:13, which is what is his name? 4:1, which is what if they don't believe me? 410 is I'm slow of speech. I put 413 in there as send somebody else, like
Yep.
not me, send somebody else. And then
That's the one I need to tell you about. Let's see
okay,
here. Get down here to Benjamin's comment. Oh, where did it go? Oh, this is Benjamin Franklin quote. It's common for men to give pretended reasons instead of one real one. Pretended reasons instead of one real one.
nice.
So anyway, I thought that was cute. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. I'm got the same one so far.
Right, and then the other one I picked was 612,
Yep.
where he repeats, "I'm a slow speaker. I'm still a poor speaker."
He seemed to have forgotten that God said, "Who do you think's putting the words in your mouth anyway? Who created that mouth?" Duh.
Yeah. So so those are the ones I came up with.
And those same ones I did.
Okay. Okay. So so then question 4 deals with those particular excuses, and you know, and ask the personal question of which one of those might you have used to get out of or push back on God's, you know, calling in your own life. I mean, the one I identify with is that, you know, for the first half of my life, I knew that, you know, as an introvert, you know, I couldn't get up in front and talk in front of people, that there was no way I could go into a profession where my job was to get up and talk in front of people. And, you know, just like Moses, God knocked that down for me and was like, "No, you're good. I got this." And so
my
now I
answer
talk
was all of the above.
Right.
But I know what you're talking about because I had a terrible time in speech in high school. And then when I got my first job, I had to give a presentation and Gail may or may not remember, but I don't think I slept much that night. I was scared to death. And then after a while, you know, you get some notes together and then you talk for an hour. You know, it comes.
Yep.
It comes.
Yep.
And he helps for sure.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I remember when I had speech class in high school, that the notes that we were allowed got less and less as the year went on. So, I mean, we could start with like 3x5 index cards and, you know, they could have, you know, whatever we wanted on them. But by the end, we could have one note card and, you know, and it could only have, you know, so many words on it. And I remember sweating through my shirts, just, you know, it's like, you know, I talked like this because I didn't want anybody to see what's going on underneath my arms. I hadn't figured out yet that I could wear a sport coat and hide that.
Hide everything, yeah. But then it'd be worse. Your whole shirt would be sopping wet from the.
Yeah, I'd take it off and the back is just like sopping wet. Anyway. So anyway, that was the class I learned how to use props in, and you know, and so it was.
So now we know why you wear. Now we know why you wear a coat all the time.
It's not so much a problem anymore, but it just helps.
Yeah.
Better confidence. Very good. All right. Number 5, how does the promise God makes to Moses in Exodus 3:12, I will be with you, allow Moses to push past his excuses and step into the plans God has for him? Again, it's a matter of he's got, he believes from this moment that God will be with him. He believes in the promise, and he's then able to impart that to the people. And the people won't always believe it, as we see throughout the narrative. They don't always believe it, and in some cases that costs them dearly. But he keeps drawing back to this in his own life and for the life of the people, that God says he will be with us. And so when it's like you're complaining about not having anything to eat, you're complaining about not having anything to drink, when you're complaining about we're wandering around this place and we don't know where we're going, it's he draws right back to this. And I look at this, even though there are some there, he's still not finished with his excuses yet here. I still feel like he's found this foundation and he's building on it, however shakily it might be at first. But it's allowing Moses to push past those excuses, and I think really the tipping point for me is when God says, "Okay, Aaron will go with you," and Aaron's like that sort of that safety net of all right, Aaron talks well, I'm going to talk to God, and I'm going to talk to Aaron, and then Aaron's going to talk to Pharaoh, and we're going to get this. We're going to do this. Aaron doesn't get a lot of credit in this story. As it unfolds, Moses is still the guy out front. But it's the way that I look at Aaron is that he's like he's the Samwise Gamgee of this story. Frodo, is the one who gets to ultimately toss the ring in, but he doesn't get there without Samwise Gamgee, and Moses doesn't get to Pharaoh's court and get what needs to be done and get the people out of Egypt without Aaron. So there you go. So now I've talked about Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. You can tell what I grew up just there. I need some.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I need some new movie references.
Well, here, let me give you a reference that you may not know anything about. This may be all new to you. Have you ever heard of the song Mr. Custer?
No.
I could probably, I'll send it to you so you can listen to it. But the very first words, "Please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go." "Hey, Mr. Custer, please don't make me go. I had a dream last night about the coming fight. Somebody yelled attack, and there I stood with an arrow in my back." So it's a Ray Stevens comedy song from I don't know, 50s, I'm sure. It's called Mr. Custer. I'll forward it to you so you can. But I thought about Moses said he didn't want to go. "Hey, right. Mr. Custer, I don't want to go. Hey, God, I don't want to go."
Right. Yeah.
You can have that music being played in the background.
Right.
So, anyway.
All right. So number 6 is, how might remembering that promise of presence help you push past your excuses? Again, that's another self-reflection one to to look at, and to how do you draw upon that promise when you don't want to go, when you don't feel qualified, when you don't feel able? Then how do you draw strength from that promise of, okay, God is with us, we can do this. God is with me, I can do this. All right. Number 7, the divine name that God shares with Moses, I am who I am, in verse 14, becomes the name that embodies God's presence with Moses and with the people of Israel. So how does the meaning of this name embody the promise of God's presence from 3:12? So I talk about this in my message. And so so the phrase "I will be with you," that "will be," and the name "I am who I am" are from the same verb. It's the to be verb, haya. So when so the divine name is it's the most it's the word that Hebrews don't say, Jewish people don't say. We typically transliterate it as Yahweh. Hebrews and Jewish people will pronounce it Adonai, which is and there's some interesting gymnastics that they do for that.
I read that in my commentary about how they take the vowels out of Adonai
and point it on the Yod He Vav He.
And they can end up with Jehovah or something, if I remember.
Yep, that's right. And Jehovah is actually Latin, but anyway, that's a whole nother issue. But they're the same verb, and because that verb is it's future tense in verse 12, and it's present tense in verse 14, but it's the same verb, then they overlap one another. And so what the point I draw is that because it's the same word, it's the same verb, what God is telling Moses is that when he says, "I will be with you," he's giving him a hint about what God's name is. And then in giving him the name, he's fulfilling the promise of being with him. So he's merging these two things together and saying, because in my NRSV, there is there's an alternate translation for "I am who I am" as "I will be what I will be." It puts it in that future tense, and so so the what again, this is how I look at it and how I understand it, is that because the meanings of both "I will be with you" and "I am who I am" are so close to one another, that this is just a double helping for Moses to see that the very thing that God is promising is God's presence. And so in his very name, he is saying that "I will be with you." Now, I don't make this, as I was studying and as I was reflecting on it, I made the further connection to Isaiah 7, where the prophet looks at King Ahaz and says that there will be a child that will be born, and his name will be Emmanuel, which is God is with us. And then jump to Matthew 1, where the angel is quoting the prophet Isaiah, saying, "This will be a sign to you, that a virgin will conceive and bear a son, and you will name him Emmanuel," and connect that with Jesus's name meaning God saves. And so anyway, so I looked at those three wilderness moments of Exodus 3, where the people are enslaved; Isaiah 7, where there's an impending invasion that Isaiah is trying to help King Ahaz out of, and then in Matthew 1, where there's this unexpected pregnancy. And every one of them has this idea of God is with us, that it becomes this foundation for the entire biblical narrative. So it's it's kind of cool. I nerded out just a little bit this week. So
if I might, I want to ask you something and see if this makes sense.
Sure.
In the study I'm doing for Genesis, the name used for God in the earliest parts of Genesis is not the same as the one that is talking with and being with Adam. The name changes so that the Israelites when they read this, would know that the God that created was also the God that is with them now.
Mhm.
And there's evidently some attempt to make sure that they understand that these are the same God, not two different ones. So,
Right. Yeah,
and
there's two main words for God in the Old Testament. One is Elohim, which is typically translated as God. And then when it's Adonai, then it's typically translated as Lord with small capitals O-R-D. And so you can tell the differentiation between the two most of the time when that happens.
is there a Bible translation anywhere that has the Hebrew words for God? And every time you read word God, it would have what the word was in the Hebrew. Is there anything like that?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look.
That's okay. I just, if you knew, that's okay. If you don't, that's okay too. There probably isn't, because then somebody, but then somebody go crazy and start picking all the other words like water and bread and
Right.
so
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, there's a balance between every translation is a balance between how to faithfully articulate the original language into a new language and clarify meaning. So it's just it's hard work. That's why it takes dozens of people to make that happen, except in the case of the Message, which Eugene Peterson did himself. But anyway, but that took him like decades to do. So
gosh.
All while pastoring a church, by the way.
Oh my word.
He was pastoring a church while he did that.
Goodness sakes.
Mm-hmm. So
but it's an interesting read.
It is. It's fascinating at times. Like this whole deal about the way he translates heavenly hosts is the Lord of angel armies, and it's like interesting. Okay, it's the word choices and the phraseology that he uses in some places are fascinating, and then other times are just downright confusing. So I appreciate it for what it is and the beauty of the project that the Message is. It's just not always. There's sometimes where it's just not clear as it needs to be, in my opinion, and that's one non-Bible scholar's opinion. I mean, so I certainly am not an original language expert. So, all right. Let's see. Number 8. What do you notice about how God describes Pharaoh's reaction to the request God is calling Moses to take to Pharaoh? Why does this seem counterintuitive? So we're in chapter 4. And let's see where we at. Or is that in chapter 4? No, I think that's at the end. No, this is at the end of chapter 3. He says that the people will listen, and then, however, the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, and I will perform in it. After that, he will let you go. Let's see. So the again, we have the working knowledge of what happens later in Exodus to bear on this, but the reaction that God describes is that Pharaoh won't listen, that he won't listen unless compelled by a powerful hand. And yet God says, you're still going to go, even though he's going to push back, even though he's not going to do anything, you're still going to go. And again, there are occasions in the course of the 10 plagues where Pharaoh gives a little bit more and then takes it away, such to the point that they almost start packing up and leaving before, like I think it's on plague 8 or 9. They start packing up and they're getting ready, and then he's like, nope, just kidding, I'm not going to do that. So it seems counterintuitive for me that God is sending Moses into almost a losing battle. But when we read through it, and we look at it from we kind of zoom out a little bit, what I see is that God is teaching Moses trust. God is teaching Moses to truly believe that God is with them. Yes, there's going to be setbacks along the way. They're going to see that in the wilderness, but God is with them. And again, he can draw back to this moment and say, yeah, Pharaoh's not going to let us go until moved by a mighty hand. And that happens, with basically the hand of God moving throughout Egypt as the plague is going through. So it seems counterintuitive that God would say, go, it's not going to work, but go anyway. Like, wait, what? So, number 9 is the miraculous powers. So he's able to put his hand in his cloak, come out leprous. He's able to toss down his staff and make it become a snake. And both of those he's able to fix. We'll find out soon enough that the Pharaoh's magicians are able to do that as well. So it's less than convincing. And they're even able to turn water to blood too. So anyway. Number 10 is who becomes Moses' traveling companion, and that's Aaron, his brother. He'll be the one, and it's significant for Moses because number 1, he's his brother, but number 2, he's the one who's going to do the talking, which knocks down that excuse of not being able to, or being slow of speech, not being eloquent. And number 11 is how do the elders and the people of Israel respond to Moses' signs and Aaron's words. And it, let's see. So he goes back. Moses took with him. So this is the end of chapter 4. They went and assembled. This is verse 29. Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of Israelites, and Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and performed the signs in front of the people. And the people believed. They believed. And when they heard that the Lord had given heed to the Israelites and that they had seen he had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped. So they believed, and then they bowed down and worshiped. And this is significant because this is the first step in them getting out of Egypt. They have to believe that Moses was actually sent by the Lord to free them, and that God is going to deliver them. And so that their response is belief and worship, then that sets them up for being able to get out of Egypt. It's not going to get them all the way, because there will still be the Back to Egypt committee. But it sets them up for believing that when they put the blood on the doorposts, as God has instructed, that, they may, I don't know, I've seen the 10 Commandments a few times, and I don't know if anybody's crossing their fingers and crossing their toes while they're eating that dinner or whatnot. But it sure came in handy when that worked and they start leaving Egypt and they start asking people for their clothes and gold and everything. And the Egyptians are just like, get out, please go here, take whatever you want. It comes in handy.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Good. Questions? Anything else?
No, I don't think there's anything so much on the lesson as when do you know if you're going to do something? Do a study group.
Let me, I need to look at my calendar very closely. As we're getting back into the building, I've got double recording next week, and we're just, everything's sort of like, everything's compressed. So I'm just gonna have to be real careful about my own calendar before I get overly swamped. But I should
okay.
know. I should know in the next day or so.
Okay.
I'm just gonna. I'll be honest that I just need to look and be real careful about how that all looks.
Well,
given
and
the-
if that for some reason doesn't work out, then if you could let us know about your about Debbie's class.
Sure. I'll pass that word along to Janice. I'll get to her today about that, and then and let her know that I'm considering something in the evening during the week.
Okay.
I got to talk to my
would-
other. I got to talk to my
Go
other
ahead.
calendar manager, because when I do something in the evening, it affects other things here at the house. So,
Yeah. If you would rather I notify her, because she copied me on the letter that went to the email that went to you, and then she
okay.
started texting me first thing this morning wanting to know if I knew any answers.
Okay.
So if you want me to let her know, I can let her know that she should see something by the end of the week that would
Yeah.
tell us when that might be able to happen and who it would be with,
Mm-hmm.
whom it would be, with whom it would be.
With whom? Either way.
Pastor Catherine's father, John Turner,
Mhm. Taylor. Yeah.
His mother was a school teacher, English, and John was so careful with his word choice, especially putting those prepositions at the end of sentences. He was good at it. He avoided it at all costs because he didn't want his mama coming back.
Right. Yeah. I saw you split that infinity.
John Taylor.
Oh, John Taylor.
Yes, John Taylor. I'm sorry, John Taylor.
He's a good man.
He's a wonderful guy. We actually had him come up to our Sunday school class, and he did Gail's and mine 40th anniversary redo in front of the Sunday school class.
She re-upped?
Pardon? Yeah, she
re-upped?
re-upped. Yeah, we got 50 coming up in another few years, and
Awesome.
we'll have to see if it happens again. But
I'll look at my calendar. I'll call John.
That'll be 2024.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, I'm looking forward to this study, and I'm already starting to get some little cross feeding going on between this and Genesis. So
Sure.
I'm loving that too.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Well, if I can help in any way, let me know.
I appreciate
All right.
All
Good. Take care.
Bye for now.